25,000 gallons a day. That's money right down the drain. And the reason they're having to do this is because demand has just collapsed.
This week, President Donald Trump announced a 17% tariff will be in place for tomatoes from Mexico.
America's dairy empire is crumbling, and Mexico just walked away. Mexico is quietly cutting back on U.S. milk imports, a move that could shake the entire dairy industry. At the same time, Canada has sealed a multi-billion-dollar dairy export deal with Mexico. Once the dairy powerhouse of North America, the U.S. now faces the unthinkable, its milk being dumped as waste. So what changed? Why did Mexico, a loyal buyer for decades, suddenly pivot to Canada? And why is Canada gaining ground while the U.S. loses its grip? This isn't just a trade deal, it's a warning. A shift in trust, values, and direction. Let's break it down in today's video. Note, this video is an independent analysis based on public sources. It does not represent any organization or political stance. We encourage you to think critically and share your thoughts in the comments. The rise of American dairy. After World War II, the U.S. exported not just products, but ideals. Milk became a global symbol of abundance, safety, and American prosperity. The words "Made in the USA" on milk cans once inspired trust from Europe to Africa. NAFTA changes everything. By the 1990s, NAFTA turned the U.S., Canada, and Mexico into a single dairy marketplace. American milk dominated, and by 2023, Mexico made up over 20% of U.S. dairy exports. The partnership seemed rock solid, until cracks started to show. Bigger, faster, but riskier. America's dairy industry grew fast. Massive farms in California and Wisconsin churned out milk with industrial precision. But questions started to surface. What are these cows being fed? Are hormones or genetically modified proteins involved? As speed and scale increased, so did doubts about quality and ethics. Canada takes the high road. Canada took a different path. Smaller scale, higher standards, and strict supply controls. Prices are higher, but so is trust. Canadian milk isn't just a product. It's a promise of transparency from farm to fridge. Mexico shifts its loyalty. For 20 years, Mexico leaned on the U.S. for milk. But as younger consumers demand cleaner, more ethical food, Mexico looked north and saw a more trustworthy partner in Canada. U.S. milk exports to Mexico are now projected to drop by 9%, the sharpest decline in nearly a decade. A broken partnership. Imagine the U.S., Canada, and Mexico as three friends running a cafe. The U.S. supplied milk, Canada brought quality and care, and Mexico was the loyal customer. But now, Mexico has quietly walked across the street to Canada's smaller, more ethical shop. It's not just milk. This shift isn't about a beverage. It's about belief, about what people feel when they hold that glass of milk. In a world that values story, ethics, and transparency, America's industrial approach may no longer be enough. The wake-up call. Earlier this July, over 250,000 gallons of U.S. milk were blocked at the Mexican border. Reason? Failure to meet livestock standards. There was no official statement, but the message was clear. Times have changed. Mexico isn't just choosing Canada's milk. It's choosing values. So, why is American milk being rejected? And can the U.S. dairy industry adapt before it's too late? Let's uncover the full story, right here, right now. This isn't just about milk. It's about trust, ethics, and a silent revolution reshaping global trade. Recently, Mexico made a surprising move. It stopped importing U.S. milk, not because of safety issues, but because of values. What replaced it? Canadian milk, plant-fed, hormone-free, ethically sourced. And behind that shift is a powerful message. The world wants more than just a product. It wants a story. For the first time in 15 years, U.S. milk faced trade rejection for cultural, not technical reasons. Canada, meanwhile, secured a $3.2 billion, 7-year export deal with Mexico without fanfare. Just quiet confidence, backed by years of building a reputation for clean, sustainable farming. Consumers today are asking new questions. What was the cow fed? Were hormones used? Was this milk raised in harmony with the land? Canadian milk answers those questions with 3 key promises: ethical farming, full traceability, and environmental care. That's why it's winning. In contrast, U.S. milk, while cheaper, comes with baggage. Over 6,000 American dairy farms have shut down in just 3 years. Meanwhile, Canada has kept its small farm stable with a system that guarantees fair pricing and protects its farmers. They're treated as partners. In the U.S., too often, they're treated as the last link in a fragile chain. When global milk prices dipped, Canadian farmers stayed afloat. American farmers lost over $1,200 a week. One Iowa farmer had to dump 8,000 gallons. No call, no explanation, just silence. His 15-year export deal to Mexico vanished overnight. "I'm not mad at Canada," he said. "They earned the trust. I just feel left behind." That's the deeper story here. The U.S. still offers subsidies, but most of it goes to massive corporations, not the small farms that are vanishing by the thousands. This isn't just a trade loss. It's a cultural one. While American milk raced for scale and speed, Canadian milk focused on values: slow, steady, and trusted. And that's what Mexico chose. Not the fastest truck, but the milk that came with a story, with dignity. Canada's system rests on 3 pillars: controlled supply and demand, no overproduction; minimum price insurance, farmers know they'll be paid; ethical certification, every liter is traceable and accountable. The result? Canada is the only G7 country that hasn't lost small dairy farms in over a decade. Milk is no longer just nutrition, it's a belief system. Modern consumers want to know if cows are treated well, if hormones are used, and if nature is respected. Cities like Mexico City, Berlin, and Toronto aren't just drinking milk. They're choosing what kind of future they support. The question now isn't just about milk. It's about who's willing to rebuild trust, adapt to new values, and speak to a generation that's no longer buying with their wallets, but with their conscience. So ask yourself, would you rather drink a cheap glass of milk, or one that tells a story worth believing in? What if milk wasn't just something you drank, but something you believed in? While the U.S. pushes volume, price, and speed, Canada has chosen a different path, one built on emotion, trust, and stories. In Canada, milk isn't just a product, it's a promise. What if milk wasn't just food, but a reflection of who we are? In America, milk is everywhere, fast, cheap, forgettable. But in Canada, it's different. It's rare, respected, almost sacred. Canadian dairy isn't about mass. It's about meaning. 97% hormone-free. Every drop traceable to a single farm. That's not just regulation, it's a promise. In Mexico, 92% of people choose milk from ethical countries. That's why Canadian milk now flows to 41 nations, including Germany and Japan. On a quiet farm in Ontario, a 12-year-old girl holds a sign, "Milk with respect." She says, "My dad told me a cow isn't a machine, it's a friend to the earth." Simple words, but they speak volumes. This is Canadian farming, land, animals, and people in balance. Yes, America makes more milk, but Canada tells a better story. That extra dollar you pay for Canadian milk? It feeds families, not factories. Meanwhile, cheap milk in the U.S. often leaves behind closed farms and empty towns. When Mexico chose Canada, it wasn't just trade. It was trust. Today, a milk label means more than policy. It decides who we believe and who we feed the future with. The world used to ask, how much? Now it asks, how? 68% of young people in the U.S. and Europe will pay more for food that's ethical. In Mexico, that number has doubled. Meaning is winning over mass. Last year, the U.S. exported $5 billion in dairy. But how long can that last if trust fades? Speed built America's dairy empire. But speed forgets the soul. Canada chose a slower path. More careful, more human, and now more trusted. Every Canadian carton can be traced to a farm, a cow, a commitment. In the U.S., traceability stops at a batch number. The OECD says ethical food chains could grow exports by 35% in 10 years. Transparency isn't a burden. It's the future. So why hasn't the U.S. changed? When Mexico chose Canada, it chose values over volume. Farming today isn't just production, it's storytelling. And the best story wins. If the U.S. doesn't adapt, small farms will fade. Exports will fall. And we'll lose something deeper, our bond with the land. But it's not too late. America can still pivot. Support small farms. Invest in traceability. And reclaim its story. Because maybe milk didn't change, but the world did. Now it wants truth. So here's the question. Should we keep racing or start listening? Can care compete with efficiency? And do small farmers still matter? Drop your thoughts below. Your voice matters. And if this message meant something to you, like, share, and help someone else hear the quiet truth before it's gone. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is listen. This was just the beginning. Hit that subscribe button and buckle up. Digital Garage has so much more in store.